Quick question, and be honest with yourself. Do you think you're middle class? Most Australians say yes. Comfortably, automatically, yes. It's the safe answer, the normal answer, the Aussie answer. But here's the strange thing. Most people are completely wrong about where they actually sit. Some are far higher up than they realize. Others are quietly slipping out of the middle altogether. And the reason is something almost nobody measures properly. Because in 2026, being middle class in Australia is no longer about your salary. It's about one single thing. And we'll get to it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you land. The real income numbers, the real wealth numbers, and the one dividing line that has quietly split the Australian middle class clean in two. No politics, no spin. Just the honest numbers, and where you fit in them. So grab a cuppa. Let's find out what middle class actually looks like now. Let's start with income, because that's what everyone assumes middle class means. So, what does the average Australian actually earn? If you line up every worker in the country, from the lowest to the highest, the person standing right in the middle earns about $67,000 a year. That's the median individual income. Half of all workers earn less than that. Half earn more. Now, that number feels low to a lot of people, and there's a reason. It includes part-time and casual workers who make up a huge slice of the workforce. If we look only at full-time workers, the middle sits higher, at around $83,000 a year. And if you combine everyone under one roof, the median household income is roughly $108,000. So hold those three numbers: $67,000 if you're a typical individual, $83,000 if you're full-time, $108,000 for a typical household. Now let's turn those into a proper map so you can find yourself on it. There's no official definition of middle class in Australia. None. But economists usually take the broad middle, and it stretches wider than you'd think. Very roughly, individual incomes from around $30,000 up to about $156,000 a year all fall inside that broad middle band, which means some things that might surprise you. If you personally earn $100,000 a year, you're not just middle class. You're actually in roughly the top 20% of all individual earners in the country. Let that sink in. Six figures puts you in the top fifth. If you earn $180,000, you're above about 95% of all workers. And the top 1%? That doesn't begin until around $420,000 a year. So if you've ever felt like you're behind on income, look at those numbers again. On salary alone, most people watching this are sitting closer to the middle, or above it, than they feel. Which raises an obvious question. If the income is fine, why does middle class feel so much harder than it used to? And this is the twist. This is the part that changes everything. Because in 2026, income is no longer the real story. Your salary tells you how much money flows through your hands each year, but it tells you almost nothing about whether you're actually getting ahead. The real marker of the modern middle class isn't what you earn. It's what you own. It's your wealth, your assets minus your debts, your net worth. And when you look at Australia through that lens, the picture transforms completely. So let's look at the number that actually matters now. The typical Australian household has a net worth of around $700,000. That's the median, the household sitting right in the middle of the country. Now here's the first shock hidden inside that number. Over the last 5 years, the average household's wealth surged from about $1.26 million to over $1.5 million. But the median household, the one in the actual middle, it barely moved. It stayed stuck around $700,000. Read that again because it's the whole story in one line. The average raced ahead. The middle stood still. That gap is not an accident. It's the sound of wealth piling up at the top while the middle treads water. And when you break net worth down by age, you can see the journey. A household in their late 20s to mid-30s sits around $80,000 to $95,000. By their late 30s to mid-40s, the typical household jumps to somewhere near $500,000. By their 50s, often past $1.2 million. And it keeps climbing toward retirement. But those averages hide the single most important divide in the country. Because how much wealth you have is now decided, more than anything else, by one yes or no question. Do you own a home? That's it. That's the line. That's what quietly splits the Australian middle class in two. Two-thirds of Australians own a home. And over the last year alone, house prices rose around 10%. So if you owned a median home worth roughly $950,000, your wealth grew by nearly $95,000 in a single year, without lifting a finger. Now think about what it takes to earn that same $95,000 through work. You'd need an income of around $125,000 a year, with no HECS debt, just to match it. That's more than $20,000 above the average wage. So a homeowner, sitting on their couch, quietly out-earned a well-paid professional through their house alone. Meanwhile, the renter beside them didn't just miss that gain. They paid more in rent year after year for the privilege of missing it. This is the Great Divide, and it has bent the country's wealth into a completely new shape. We used to picture the middle class as a nice, gentle bell curve, a big, comfortable bulge of ordinary people in the middle, with a few at each extreme. That shape is gone. Australia's wealth now looks more like a letter U. A pile of asset-rich households on one side, a growing group with almost nothing on the other, and the traditional solid middle being hollowed out from underneath. Around a third of all households now have a net worth under $300,000. Pensioners who rent, younger Australians locked out of property, families living pay to pay. So the honest truth is that there are now two middle classes in Australia. There's the asset middle. They earn an ordinary income, but they own a home, and their wealth quietly compounds while they sleep. And there's the income middle. They might earn the exact same salary, or even more, but they rent, so they feel every price rise, and they're running hard just to stand still. Same paycheck, completely different lives. And the only real difference is a set of house keys. Picture two mates who started on the exact same salary 10 years ago. One scraped together a deposit, with a bit of help, and bought a modest place. The other kept renting, enjoyed a little more freedom, and invested nothing on the side. Today, the first mate has hundreds of thousands in equity and a shrinking mortgage. The second is on the same wage, but facing higher rent than ever and starting from zero. Neither worked harder than the other. One just crossed the line, and one didn't. So what does middle class actually look like in 2026? Let's paint the honest picture. It's a household bringing in somewhere around that $100,000 to $110,000 a year. If they're the asset middle, they own a home with a mortgage they're slowly paying down. They've got some super building in the background, one holiday a year, maybe a HECS debt still ticking away. They're not struggling, but they're not free either. Every big bill still stings. And if they're the income middle, the renters, that same salary buys a very different life. More freedom to move, but no asset growing underneath them, and a quiet anxiety about where they'll be at 67. That, right there, is the modern Australian middle class, split down the middle by a single line. And understanding which side you're on is the most useful money realization you can have. Because here's the part that actually matters. Where you sit today is not a life sentence. The whole point of seeing the divide clearly is so you can cross it, deliberately. If you're in the income middle and renting, your path across is about turning income into assets. That means owning a home eventually if it suits your life, or building your own asset base another way. It means treating your super like the enormous wealth engine it is, not an afterthought. And it means investing the difference consistently instead of letting a good salary just evaporate. I've made a full video breaking down whether buying or renting actually wins in Australia. Check it out and see which option suits your situation best. Because the middle class was never really about the size of your paycheck. It was about whether that paycheck was buying you a future or just buying you another month. The people who get ahead aren't always the ones earning the most. They're the ones who understood the divide early and calmly started moving to the right side of it. So, where did you land? Income middle, asset middle, higher than you thought, or fighting to get in? Wherever it is, knowing the real numbers is the first genuine step to changing them. If this gave you a clearer picture of where you actually stand, do me a favor and subscribe. We break down the real Australian money numbers, one honest video at a time. No hype, no spin. Your plan doesn't start one day. It starts today. Quick reminder before you go. This is general information only, not personal financial advice. These figures are the latest national averages, and they shift over time and by where you live. So find your own number, check the current data, and make the plan your own.